Space, time, and images with FoTotempismo. Hello, in this meeting we will address space and time represented in images obtained with light sensors. In images represented on a flat surface, in which only signs in 2 dimensions are possible, height and width, the third dimension, that is, depth, is represented exclusively in imaginary form. The fourth dimension, time, is always represented in imaginary form. The concept, named FoTotempismo, represents both space and time, no longer only in imaginary form or sensations, but in a new expression, both emotional and physical. FoTotempismo is part of a wider concept defined in space-tempism, spazio-tempismo, that we shall analyze in our next meeting. With this video, we shall explore some expressions used in the history of art to represent space and time, until introducing FoTotempismo, the latest artistic concept that utilizes light-sensitive surfaces. From the first surfaces used to receive an image, be they earth, stone, wood, walls, pages, canvas, glass, up to light-sensitive surfaces with digital support, man has always felt the necessity of representing space and time. From artisan work to the artistic, the dimension of space and time has only been that of emotions. The impression that the image on a flat surface generates can be realistic, abstract, but also illusory and imaginary. However, this impression originates from a simple, bidimensional flat image. The representation of space in images. To represent three-dimensionality on a flat surface, the artist is forced to turn to illusory means that permit who observes the work to identify the third dimension or the depth. Many have been the strategies to represent depth, but undoubtedly the most realistic representation of depth has been reached with the perspective method. The perspective, obtained using the pinhole camera, camera obscura, known in ancient Greece and cited by Aristotle, has been the best system utilized by painters to reproduce the three-dimensional aspect in their paintings. In the first decades of the 1800s, with the discovery of light-sensitive elements, the pinhole camera, camera obscura, was transformed into the photo camera, and the image was established with a tridimensional perspective effect. Therefore, reality is represented on a limited surface on which the camera, fixed in a static position, projects it on its sensor. The representation of time in images. In photography, as in other graphic disciplines, it is not possible to represent totally the passing of physical time. The time represented is that of emotions, while physical time is only that of the moment represented. As in paintings, visible time is the instantaneous time of the scene that is depicted. Also in photography, an equivalent example are the images produced by Henri Cartier-Bresson, famous for his snapshots. The need has always been felt to fully represent time in images, and various methods have been tried to simulate its passing. The most common representation of time is that of stories, with sequences of images depicting episodes distant one from another in time, and represented in separate areas, but present on a single surface to simulate one temporal story. This occurs also in photography, where the passing of time is represented in a sequence of photographs. Futurism and Cubism are avant-garde art forms in the early 1900s that largely explored the aspect of time represented in images. Futurism tried to simulate the passing of time graphically by isolating a succession of movements, as in the picture, dynamics of a dog on a leash. Diversely, cubism, that observes an object from different angles and depicts it on a flat surface, leaves to the observer the task of mentally reconstructing the subject itself in its total three-dimensionality. In this case, the representation of time is that given by the reconstruction of the object depicted. Picasso's portrait of Daniel Henry Kahnweiler represents in full the analytical concept of cubism. Throughout the history of images, the one discipline that first represented effectively the passing of time in a single image was the photography in FoTotempismo of the Bragaglia brothers. This was possible through the use of a light-sensitive surface, specifically photographic film placed behind the photographic lens of the camera, that is to say, a fixed device, immobile and regulated for long exposure to capture the movement of the subjects. Thus, it is a representation of a fixed space and registration of the movements of the subject during the time of shooting. From all these analyses, one can affirm that the space in an image was represented in different ways, but predominantly only that perspective was used and seen from one position. Similarly to the representation of a single space or of a sole perspective, the representation of time before FoTotempismo of the Bragaglia brothers as an instant as time that does not exist, only as time of emotions. Space, time. We shall examine the simultaneousness of space-time to explore contemporaneously space and time. We analyze the analysis of the philosopher, semiotician, and maximum theoretician of space-time in images, Pavel Alexandrovich Florensky, who stated, "The visual essence of motion consists in the fact that not only one point of view, one horizon, one scale of measurement are observed, while these three units presuppose at its foundation of the perspective projection of the world. Therefore, according to Florensky, one observes space, time, spatial and temporal horizons, distances, weights, volumes, speeds, directions, masses, and other, which make us perceive the world in which we are immersed. The thought expressed by Florensky is relative to the analysis of the perception of movement of the subject in space and time. Adding to this analysis also the space-temporal displacement of the point of observation completes the perspective vision in the concept of space-time, conceptualized for the artistic component in FoTotempismo. The term, which was used by Enzo Trifolelli in 2010, was first seen in his work in 2011. For the first time in the history of photography, the passage of time in space was represented on a bidimensional surface. FoTotempismo. FoTotempismo is the concept of representing contemporaneously space and time. This concept of representing an image, contrarily to all previous attempts, explores truly space in time. The artist with camera moving in the space around the subject with a single shot explores its various perspectives, representing them in a single work with the images on a flat surface. The work thus composed forces the viewer to travel visually the same spaces and times lived by the artist and the subject in a new space-temporal dimension never before represented and seen. In the wholeness of the work, the artist can represent also not consecutive time and space with respect to the first image, making a space-temporal leap never represented in a photograph. The space-temporal dimensions, the emotions, the tensions, and other characteristics present in FoTotempismo works do not give the sum of the values in the single surfaces, but give back the multiplicative result and synergy of their sum, not only material and physical signs. With FoTotempismo, the dream comes true. The multi-perspective lived in space together with the fourth dimension, that is, time, are finally represented where the lived is the fourth unit that joins the points of view, the horizons, and the scales of measurement as affirmed by Florensky. Thank you for your kind attention. Until our next meeting.